Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversation with Calvin, We the Species. Um, where do I begin? Firstly, I'll begin at the beginning. I'm with Dave Chauhan, and Dave is actually in Melbourne, Australia, as we speak. And it's after 5 here, and it's probably after 7 down there, and it's tomorrow. I always have a hard time processing that. It's tomorrow, even though I'm talking to you now in present time. So there's kind of this I don't know, maybe there's some relativity here from Einstein. I don't know. It's tomorrow, but it's here now. And as I told Dave, we've been kind of shooting the breeze here for the last hour, getting caught up. And I always marvel at the universe because Dave kind of found me in the universe, and boom, 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 and here we are. And Dave is the author of Captain Set Sail, which talks about nautical leadership, and has nothing to do with being a leader on a boat. It has to do with a whole new vision of leadership today. And that is so hugely important. And what I observed and what Dave's going to talk about leadership and how crucial the whole term of leadership is, all the AI, this is Calvin talking, all the AI in the world can't touch leadership. You can't go to AI and say, be a leader. It doesn't work. You need the human element of leadership and the knowledge of leadership and all the ingredients of leadership, which Dave is going to talk about now. I want to say I'm somewhat eminently qualified to understand about leadership because I did work for 25 years for the richest Italian in the world at Luxottica Group, one of the most amazing companies on the planet, and we haven't even seen all the things that they can do. So you spend 25 years working for a leader. He was a leader, and you learn a ton of things, and you see the change that and the growth that he can navigate. And there's that wonderful term, navigation, nautical navigation. And courageous navigation. There's so much here to unpack with Dave, and this is going to be ongoing because there's great chemistry here, and I'm just thrilled to do this, and I love being here and also tomorrow at the same time. So my monologue is officially concluded, Dave. Why don't you do a little bit of a background, and then we're going to talk Captain Set Sail, etc.
Thank you, Calvin. Good day to you and to your audience. It's an honor to be here. I've read about you, I've learned about you, and finally to be able to share screen and this platform with your audience and talk about my journey. I am humbled. For 17 years, I have been in arenas leading high-stake projects, multi-million-dollar projects, part of business units from diverse range of industries. And what I've felt and what I've learned is no matter where you are, no matter what you do, whether you come from for purpose, whether you come from for profit, whether you come from, no matter what industry you come from, the messy reality of leadership never changes. And the biggest truth that I've learned is that old maps of leadership, that command and control model of leadership doesn't work and will not work, especially in the uncertain world that we are today. And it will rather burn organizations and people if we stop doing what we are doing as that part of command and control leadership. And from that part, I ventured on this journey where I felt if I won't talk about this, I will lose my own sense of identity. I will lose my own sense of purpose. And I am nearly 40 now. I was not willing to die this early. And I'm talking about spiritually, I'm talking about internally, but also as an individual that I am, my own identity. I didn't want to lose my own identity. So I ventured this journey almost about a year ago, and there is an interesting backstory that we can talk about it. So thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure. It's an honor.
My pleasure and my honor too. Really, leadership. I got to show it again. Captain Set Sail. I'm looking at my notes. Talk a little bit about exploring your own journey because you became, and I love this term. I love it as being an author. You called yourself an accidental author. What is that about?
So to summarize it before I start, I wouldn't have started had I known I was starting what I was starting. I wouldn't have finished a book had I known I was starting writing a book. And how it all started last year in November, towards the end of my MBA program, and I'm University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign
Oh,
student.
wow. Wow.
Yes, I bleed blue and orange. Um,
Wow.
um, and the backstory to that is that back in 2022, towards the back end of COVID, I was looking for my purpose in life. I got to the point where I was like, my journey in corporate period is end. I need to go and discover something. I'm happy where I am. Now I need to go and start working for corporate for purpose organization. And I was chosen to be the CEO for Benigo Food Share, and we were going through the interviewing process. And I was sitting with the last candidate to go and meet with the board and the chair and do my final presentations, which was again weeks long process because it was a serious role. It was a role that really was important for the community, providing food security to so many people. And I had this moment, this epiphany, where I was sitting. I suddenly felt extreme weight of leadership. It wasn't that I was understanding the purpose and the work this organization was doing for the first time. I had done this all. It has been for weeks, but I felt that extreme weight. And big part of it was understanding that if I screw up somewhere, there's going to be a real person who will be affected. And of all places, if there is an elderly sick person or a child who really needs food and I screw up, it's the real life that will get impacted. Somebody might lose, somebody might die. And none of that will come on spreadsheets. You won't even read or news about it because you would never know. And from that point, I felt I need to go back to university and study. So it was almost a change of religion for me because until that moment, I always thought I'm the one of those guys who will say, take my previous 2 degrees away, give me my money back, I'll put it in share market or I'll start a business and learn that way. I am not going back to organized education system again. So here in 2022, I'm thinking that I need to go back because I have felt this extreme weight of leadership. And it's interesting because it wasn't the first time I felt. And I talk about in the book that these moments of leadership happen throughout your life. You just need to pick one. You just need to grab one and latch onto it and then start your journey. That's that moment of purpose, that moment of leadership. It happens throughout your life. So last year, towards end of November, here I am finishing my MBA program, and this question popped up again. What's the purpose of my life? Why did I start this MBA journey? People in my peer group, they were all talking about we will start a company, we will go and venture with somebody, and perhaps promotion, perhaps next role. And interestingly, at the same time, few chatters started in my organization at the time about restructuring again. And for me, you talk about in your work about spirituality, or you talk about in your work, you got to see these signals in life. Life gives you these signals, and I think for me that was my signal. That was my green light. That this is the time I need to question. I'm questioning my own work. There is restructuring happening in organization. What I'm going to do. So I come back home. I had this conversation with my wife, Sari, and I said, sorry, you have felt me stumbling, you have felt me questioning my own existence and talking about purpose of my life. Uh, and I'm on crossroads again. My organization says that yes, we'll figure out your position, we'll figure out your role, whatnot, da da da. And here I am. I know this is not my purpose. Should I wait to this purpose thing to really be crystal clear, or is this my time to make that walk? She said, dive do it. It's never gonna get easier. You will never find that journey, that island that you're wanting to get to. It's never going to happen. And I said, okay, by Wednesday next week, with no, glory, with no pump and show, I'm out. My I had a conversation with my MD. His thoughts were, oh, we can continue for a few months and weeks and figure out where this is going to go. And my response was, no, Mark, I'm out. I'm out like now. And he was like, now? This is not what I want. And I said, Mark, with all respect, this is what I want. My time's up. And here I am. I was state leader for this organization, running almost 70, $80 million unit in Victoria, one of the biggest business unit in this organization. And here I am, that I'm done. I'm walking away. I come back home with no idea in terms of what I'm going to do in my life. I latched on to, like I said, that moment of reflection, and I'm really good at journaling. You would have observed me. I write a lot.
I've observed you writing stuff down there.
Yeah, and I started doing that. I said, there's no way for me to figure out what's happening in life. I was all in these tantrums, in this tumultuous period in my life now, where leaving couple $100,000 paycheck and walking away from knowing everything. A day before, I was feeling I knew everything. We were planning holidays, we were planning where we're going to invest money and all that kind of stuff. And the following 4 days later, here I am, but technically jobless,
Yeah.
no idea what I'm going to do next. And I started writing it down. It took me about a month and a half, and by now we are in January. Christmas is gone. And my wife, Sari, she goes back to her job. And by Thursday of that week, she comes back home and she questions, Dave, have you cooked? I said, no, sorry, I'll organize dinner now. Oh, have you taken Sevi, our dog, for a walk? Oh, no, I'll do that now. And I think by Thursday, 4 days into it, I think she kept her patience, but now she lost it. She's like, Dave, what's happening? I'll leave you 6 a.m. in the morning, and I'm back at 7. Dinner's not there. The house is as messy as it was. Dog's not been taken for a walk. You are sitting exactly where you were. And I asked you, you had your dinner, or lunch or whatnot. You haven't had anything. And I said, actually, I've been trying to process all this. I think I might have written a book. She sits down with her hands, with her head in her hands, and she's like, "I'm getting really worried about you. Should I call the family? Should I call our support network? Because, or do you need to go out with your mates and go out for camping? We go to the bush with my friends and all that. You need to figure this out." And I said, "Why are you so concerned?" She said, "In that sentence, you used the word, 'I might have written a book.' Either you have or either you haven't. It's a verb. What have you done? What are you doing? Like, I'm concerned about your own mental health." And I said, okay, let me rephrase it. I've been writing this down. I've been trying to process, and for the first time, I feel I I can articulate it. I can say what I've been trying to say, what I've been feeling for all these years, constantly, shifting doors and trying to figure out what's the purpose of my life. And she said, okay, okay, we'll figure this out together. Australia Day is coming, which is 26th of January, similar to your 4th of July in the US. And I give her all the printout, and she's sitting here at 6 a.m. in the morning, bright summer day, you know, already, sun's up, and she's reading, and she said, "Okay, give me 3 hours and come back." And 3 hours later, I come back, 70 pages I printed for her. All I can see was red ink smudged everywhere. And I'm like, this is the girl who empowered me to walk this walk a few months ago now, by now. She's not going to be pretty. She's going to give it straight to me. And she did, as she is. She said, these first 7 pages, they are bad. They are so bad that you should never talk about it. I can't really make any sense out of it. And because I love you, because I know the pain that you're going through, because I can see you struggling every day trying to figure out what's the purpose of your life, I persevered. And when you get to eighth page, there is something really meaningful that you should share with the world. It's important. You should continue working on it. And I crashed into my in the chair and I started crying. She said, "What?" I said, "This is it. This is exactly what I needed to hear." but this is the end of my journey. This is all I needed to say. This is all I thought I could do. This is all I knew, and I really don't know what next. Um, and to my, ignorant or silly eyes, I thought 70 pages printed on the biggest font you can print, about 10,000 words is a book. I had no idea about it. What was it to call it a book? I thought it was a book. It's barely a coffee table book. We started reaching out to all these editors, and we shared the first 8 pages that she spoke about. We inked that out better. We write it, rewritten it a couple times, and I started getting responses from different editors. And out of 6 editors that we reached out to, and all of them came back with similar sort of reviews that, oh, this is phenomenal. We want to read more about this work. We haven't seen this work for almost a decade now, since the last time, they started comparing with Simon Sinek's and Brené Brown's of the world, their work. And with all humility, I don't think so my work's that powerful. But to me, when I heard all that, it encouraged me. And out of all those 6 editors, one came back and he said, I just want to work on this. I want to put my name on it, and I want to be work on my life. And his name is Michael Tizano from New York.
Okay.
Um, and Michael came back and Michael said, I just want to work on this. I love the metaphors that you have used. I loved how playful it is and how simple it is, but how powerful and impactful it is, how human it is. And Michael and I, we started working together. And what, 14, 15 revisions later,
Wow.
10,000 words that I thought it was, it's almost sitting at 70,000 words, 12, 14 chapters by now, if we consider them all. It's a real book, and it became a journey of meeting wonderful people who were so kind and graceful with their help, that to me, who understood or who had no idea about reading or writing a book for that matter, it became a book. So that's why I call myself an accidental author.
It sure is. What a great story. Truly, what a great story. I was, my journey. By the way, just so you know, I deal, part of what I deal in is synchronicities. I have a sister, Sari.
There you go. And there are not many people with that name, sorry.
Not at all. Not
Yes.
at all. Certainly not here in New Jersey. Anyway,
She's the only one in Australia that I
wow.
know of.
Yeah, just so you know, I'm not close with her, but nevertheless, I have a sister, Sari.
Hmm. Connections.
File that away in your memory bank. So, uh, and by the way, in my observation, as you know, I've written, 2 novels, and now I'm finishing a third book. Editors are everything. You can't do it yourself. Yeah, you got AI now that can, a couple of programs there, but an editor, to have a great relationship with an editor and to have somebody on your team is a wonderful, it kind of puts it all together. And listen, it was an editor that helped me get a Kirkus Star. I wouldn't have gotten it on my own. And she did nothing to my voice, my style, my words, just got rid of things that, I didn't need. So, okay. Um, you say leadership isn't about budgets and spreadsheets, which you kind of think it is, but it ain't. But it's about real lives of and families that depend on your decisions. Why don't you kind of talk about that a little bit? Because I believe that in my own way. That's what a leader is, caring about people.
Absolutely, Calvin. Early on during my career, I had this moment, and like I said, for me, leadership and purpose of your life comes when you reflect upon things and when you think not just on surface level, but why it happens, and 5 layers deep, you'll figure out the why. It's always embedded somewhere deeper. And for me, I had this moment early on. We were sitting in this boardroom, and the project that we were working at the time, multi-million-dollar project, was stuck. And we had this contractual tussle where my project project director at the time said, he looked at all of us in the team, and he said, if we fail to get this contract extension, we'll have to cull the team. There's no way we can continue with 17 people team at the time, and we'll have to let people go. And I walked out of that room, and this guy who was never emotional, I had seen him, but he said this, and I am pondering over it, and it became real. In that moment, I realized it wasn't about spreadsheets. It wasn't about your KPIs. It wasn't about goals. It was about real people, because if we let real people go, there are real families who will suddenly lose their income and possibly the mortgage payments and food on the table and all that. And we all have witnessed this. At least during COVID, big part of the globe did witness it heavily. And for me, that was the moment for the first time I learned myself, and it sort of became part of my DNA, that leadership isn't about what you do in that fancy leadership management talk with your suits and ties on. Leadership happens much after, like I said, the why happens much after that. And interestingly, we were talking about leadership early on during our, pre-chat. Leadership happens in small moments. We think leadership happens when we go to our first job and we see somebody and they become our boss and they become our managers and all that. But anthropologically, biologically, we see leadership from the very first moment we come on this planet, right? We are a little baby who needs care and nourishment, and we get that from hospital staff, from our parents, from our carers. And we see that moment. In that moment, if something goes wrong, it's innate human need for us to be protected and cared. And that's leadership. That's the definition of leadership. We see leadership when little Joey comes from school and tells his dad that Cynthia was being not nice to me, so I pushed her away. And 40 years later, little Joey had this moment where this dad gives him lecture that that's not how you deal with women. That's the moment of leadership for that dad. Leadership happens all the way when little Joey goes to school and this teacher teaches the lessons of life. Leadership happens when we go and talk about in little football clubs, in little community clubs, that what are we going to do with this $2,000 grant that we are getting? Should we go buy soccer pitches or fix our soccer pitches? Or should we get a better coach who can design these people to be better human beings? And leadership happens all the way in corporate boardrooms. Leadership happens all the way to what's happening in Ukraine. So for me, it's all connected. I'm not talking about just spiritual stuff. I'm talking about, it's been proven scientifically that we have this innate part of it's part of our DNA that we seek leadership all the time. It happens. It has happened, and I'm interesting theories around it, that how leadership started 100,000 years ago. It never started with KPIs. It never started with results. It always started with looking after people, being caring, and being human centric. And that's a big part of my work that I talk about.
Okay. The world is changing, and I love your metaphors. Your nautical metaphors. They're wonderful. You know why? Because they kind of reach out and embrace and hold you, and it makes you think. So, uh, barring your metaphors, I'm not creating this. We're using outdated maps for a world that has completely changed. It's almost daily we got deal with a change. So that the fact that we're using we're using outdated maps, it kind of leads to burnout for leaders and anxiety. It leads to a whole bunch of different things. So, and you can explore this. So a captain on a calm sea can give some orders, but the true navigator, the true leader, has to really shine in a storm. So explore elements of what a navigator's parenthesis leader mindset is.
So To summarize before we start, world needs leaders who don't bark orders, but are right deep down in trenches with their people, navigating with them. And through my work, what I've discovered is, and I talk about in way of nautical stories, and I'm heavily inspired by nautical history of human journey, and you will find that people who were successful, navigators who were successful, they were constantly successful, repeatedly. They were successful journey after journey, no matter what kind of sea, what direction they're heading toward, they were successful. And those who struggle, they sometimes stumbled in the very few days of the beginning of their journey. The difference wasn't they had better ships. Difference wasn't that they had better radars, better control, better navigation systems, better weather prediction system. We had none of them, or we had what everybody else had at the time. But those who persevered, there was interesting chemistry that was happening in the ship, within the confinements of the ship. And that's how I see the leadership today. We as humanity, we are in a collective world, in this collective, metaphorical ship, and we are in really uncertain world, political, economic, social, and we can see it's never been this uncertain, and people will feel that this is for the first time. No, this uncertainty has always prevailed, but the frequency between the uncertainty that has decreased. We saw these once in century events we used to see once every century, and then became once every 50 years. Now it's becoming decades, and now it's pretty much getting close to once or twice every few decades. So this uncertainty, this volatility is increasing. And in my work, I talk about VUCA. We had seen these concepts being implemented in 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 um, in armed forces, and now we can see that how that work can really be transferred into corporate, non-corporate, or our social world, and how we can define. And what I talk about is, without making it overly simplistic, is while everything in leadership matters, your charisma, your how you relate with people, everything that comes makes a leader as a leader. Fundamentally, if three things are missing from a leader, that is their purpose anchored in values, their ability to adapt when things are constantly changing, which spoke about uncertainty, and number third, their ability to be decisive and courageous and take an action when it's really needed, is what forms a holistic leader. And from that analogy, it's the navigator mindset. Because by the time you fix or finish a plan, by the time you make all these assumptions, you pick all this data and say, come up with a plan that you think is a perfect plan, the world has already changed out there. We spoke about 5 year strategy, we talk about 10 year strategy. By the time it's 5 years done, the world will be totally different. So as a leader, you need to understand that, we are living in a very uncertain world, and it's not about planning is important, and talk about it. There is a great metaphor where it's said that, planning is the most important part, but plan is not. So in that analogy, I feel it is time for leaders to realize that it is not about control, it's not about command, it's about navigation. And that's what leadership's purpose is.
Okay. Can you, by the way, I heard a great thing yesterday from this former chief engineer on the space shuttle. And maybe this, he said, and it stuck in my head, and lots of things don't stick in my head, but um, fail to plan, plan to fail.
Yep.
I thought that was wonderful. And it's stuck in my head and I can't lose it. So it's a
Yep.
great thing. But can you elaborate a little bit? Well, let's talk about the first thing you said was talking about values. A modern leader has to have values. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Often people think values means they have to be grandiose, they have to be really large. I often say, think about your own life. By the time you get in a position where you become a leader, you often have enough moments in life that you can understand your values. And one way to do this is feel and get to that moment that really shook you hard. And whether it brings your values of honesty out, or whether it gives you the value of integrity, or whether it gives you value of social justice, whatever those values are. I'm not somebody to judge, and neither should anybody else be. Whatever your values are, first of all, a leader needs to define and understand and really hone on to their values and grab and latch onto those values. What values are not, I can tell you that. I can't tell you what your values are, but I can tell you what your values are not. The not part is pseudo values. If you think those values are there, but they're essentially just confined around you and the very people that you care about, you know, you know, you through your relationships and all that. If your values are just confined to those people, then maybe it's time for you to think about your values again. They might be pseudo values. If and once you have defined your values by the definition, then it's your journey to define your purpose. And again, your purpose doesn't need to be grandiose. It doesn't need to be large. It doesn't need to do your value signaling. It can be simple that I need to make this world a better place. That's my one of my values and what my purpose. And you always have one purpose. Everything sticks underneath it. You know, your purpose can define you goal 1.0, goal 2.0, goal 3.0. It can evolve over time, but your purpose stays same. And by then, as a leader, you need to find that extension that will become a company, an organization, a team, whatever you're doing. And you need to make sure, even if you are already part of an organization, if you're already part of a company, you need to see there is an interesting overlap there. And if that overlap's not there, I think it's time for you to question that, whether you are at the right place or not.
Okay.
So that's what I talk about by values in that
Okay.
sense.
Okay. Before we move on, um, I like to take a little bit of deep breath, and I like to go off topic completely. So I'm going to ask you a couple of not silly questions, but off-topic questions that I like, and you don't even have to answer it. But I borrowed this actually from a great journalist, and I use it all the time. So here's the Dave, excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with. And it could be a couple. There's no rules here. So excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with.
Hmm. That's an interesting question.
It is.
Um, um, I'd like to spend a day with Batman. And I think there is interesting psychology and interesting work that character provides. And I talk about in my own journey that you need to find people who inspire you. They can be fictional characters, and Batman's always inspired me. So I would like to spend a day with Batman.
Okay. I mean, he had great values for sure. Um, Along those lines, I'm an old movie person. It's changed my life. Do you have any like favorite movies? Um,
Two movies that I can watch them enough time. It's Inception, um, and the second one in that series is Interstellar. Um,
okay.
and I love both of these movies. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. Great answers. Great answers. Okay. Moving on to the second ingredient here. You talk about adaptability. Um, in my readings, a compass doesn't tell you there's only one path. You have to pursue that. Uh, so it's part of a leader is learning to read signals. I mean, these are great. So why don't you talk about the essence of adaptability?
So in that sense, adaptability, we are told that we need to be adaptable. We are always told that we need to be agile, and we are in the world that these have become almost catchy buzzword. You look at an organization, they will say we are adaptable. You look at their pitch they make to client, they'll say we are adaptable, we are agile, we are quick. But what does that really mean as a leader? And that's what I've discovered as part of my work. I've uncovered and gone through it. What I call it is horizon scan. You got to look at the signals. And where would these signals come from? These signals will come from That one quiet person in your team who always says stuff and people say, ah, no, that's not going to happen. Don't worry about it. That one client, you have got 40 clients, but one client is constantly complaining, and you got to see what that complaint looked like. When we start looking at these signals, and sometimes, technology, we got to start look at different industry, different company, different types of business to understand how can it impact them and how it has impacted them already to understand how could it impact us. So depending where you are, you got to start looking at these signals, and I call this weekly horizon scan ritual that people can and leaders can adopt, where every Monday they can sit down and they can reflect back on their week and they can see what were those moments where those are nothing moments. They were not one of those major moments where you will say, oh, yep, had this moment where, I changed or it changed everything for me. But just be a bit more observant and see that what were those moments that if we really do a bit of deep dive into it, there can be something of a heavy substance and put that down there. And once you start building this one of these rituals or one of these habits, again, there are several in the book that I talk about, you will develop this ability to start seeing these weather patterns, I call them in the book. That you will start seeing that these things are often happening. It happened 6 months ago, it happened 6 weeks ago, and it's happening more frequently. And nobody is observing this. As a leader, you will start becoming this. It becomes almost your second muscle or your second habit. You will start scanning these and start making these observations, and you can start predicting the weather. So in a way, you can predict the storm before it comes, and that's what leaders' ability is. It's that wayfinder mindset to constantly question that when everything is fine, how can you can find it that something is not. And there again, one of the strategies that I talk about, you said plan to fail and fail to plan. I talk about pre-mortem strategies where you almost predict before the project or before your new venture has even started. And I call it kill your darlings before they arrive, in that mindset. So you do a pre-mortem of something that hasn't even started, thinking that it has been a clutter failure, and you start looking at what would cause or what would make that failure happen. And these are the few strategies that I talk about. And I think it is that mindset that suddenly where you're constantly in the positive mindset, you are looking at your biases, you're constantly looking at the plans, and you're looking at your dashboard that everything is going great, and suddenly you hit the wall. You can predict that wall much before it hits you. So that's what I talk about in my work as a wayfinder, as somebody who's adaptable
Okay.
mindset.
Which is, I mean, it's just a great, it's such a great word. It's has such a multitude of understandings, adaptability. I want to go off topic. We didn't even talk about this. Um, I got to frame this the right way. So, I look at leaders and what is the role? Uh, uh, well, I'll rephrase it. When I was up, I worked for a great company. I was a regional manager, so I had a mid-level nice position with one of the world's most successful eyewear companies, and I was going for a review, and maybe and the boss man he asked me one of the greatest questions that was ever asked of me. He said, "Calvin, tell me about your ego." And I was up for I had to think, I had to think fast on my feet. And that's part of the question, the role of ego. But anyway, my response to him was, because I was worried that he thought maybe I was trying to get his job, which I wasn't. And so I told him I have a great ego. It's one of it's such a gift to have this ego because it knows who and what it is. And generally speaking, I keep my ego in my back pocket. And sometimes when I need it, if I need it, I take it out of my back pocket and I use it. So, hey, I got promoted and maybe I gave him a great answer. But ego, it does have a role in the making of a leader, doesn't it? And can it get in the way? And I mean, this is completely off topic, but can ego get in the way of being a successful leader?
So to answer it, Calvin, I think ego is that initial boost that you get when you are in early phases of your career that can give you and give you a push. But what it does is and I'm analogies man, I've always made sense of the world around me with analogies. What it does is ego does exactly the same thing what it does when you take drugs for your bodybuilding. It gives you a push, it gives you quicker results early on, but then it becomes the same anvil or chain tied to your to your leg when you're trying to swim. The first thing you have to do is let it go. So in a way, what I feel is, as a leader, ego can make you look powerful. Ego can make you look influential. Ego can make you or give you quick success early on. But what it stops you from doing or being is real leader. And the moment you realize that, and how quickly or how early you realize that as part of your journey, almost predicts that how good of or successful leader you will be in your own life.
Okay. Okay. All right. The third in this trio of ingredients, and I love this too, is having the courage to act. I mean, that is I think that may be the most important thing to have the courage because it ain't easy. And nothing in the world means anything unless you have the courage to act. So expound on that.
Absolutely, Calvin. Your vision, your purpose, your mission is of no use. Your ability to be agile and adaptable is of no use if you can't act. In some ways, if you have a hot kettle and you know that every time you touch, you should react, but if you don't, it's still going to burn. Knowing that it's hot and knowing that you should pull your hand back isn't going to do any good. In the same way, in the leadership arena, that courageous moment when you find that, okay, this is where I have to act is what is precisely the most important part. This is what Captain Sullenberger did when he was flying the plane on the densest, most populated city in the US. In that moment, there was no 10-point checklist to tell him that, if your both engines shut and you're flying above these big buildings, how to land a plane. In
Mm,
that moment, he had to act. And and I often say that, leadership, can be you can almost see leadership happening in two different facets. One is when sea is calm and when you are in a tumultuous storm. In the same way, the crisis moment. So you have to define what that act means based on these two different situations. But you have to act. Now, what acting means? To me, the definition of acting in leadership mode means given the situation you are and defining what information you have got, you have to act in that precise moment. It's an equation. Now, whether that comes with 70% certainty, whether it comes with 60% certainty, whether it comes with 90% certainty, given what industry you are, where you're working, what you're doing, how important your work is, what information you can gather in that equation, you have to define what it is. And I'm not the one who should be telling you that. You're the one who can decide based on your own leadership experience, based on your own judgment. But you have to act. And I call it generally a 70% rule. A 70% rule is a good thumb rule that once you have 70% information, you're 70% certain, then you got to act. Now, like I said, that 70 can be 90, that 90 can be 50, depending what industry you are, what circumstances you are. But what's the most important part here is as a leader, you understand that it is far too dangerous not to act than to act with an imperfect plan.
okay.
And that's what is the crux of being a seafarer, that you have to act. Now, what it does not mean is putting a fake, confident face that I know all. These are the same seafarers. These are the same leaders who will say that I don't know. But what I don't know, what I do know is that we have to act. This is the maximum we can get. And that's that moment, that wisdom, that when you gain that, this is where we got to be, this is where we can be, and in that moment, you go and take the helm, you take the control, and you act. That's what leadership is.
Well, you said something really profound. Well, everything you said is profound, but I love that that example of Sullenberger. I mean, that's leadership. I
Yep.
mean, that's decision, that's leadership, that's pressure, that's life and death stuff. You
Yes.
know, it's life and death stuff. And you know what? I think leaders, even of companies, it's life and death. You've got people who depend on you. And I always said that. I've always said that. It's funny. When I worked as a regional manager, I was given the instructions I had to fire a sales rep. Uh, they said go fire, and I was the leader, and I didn't want to do it because I knew he had three kids, and he had a wonderful wife, and he's a sweet guy, and business is business. You hear that all the time, business, business, and I said, uh, let me on my dime go down there, spend a couple of weeks, and let me mold and work. I don't want to give up, and they weren't happy about that, and they didn't pay for me to go for 2 weeks far away, and but I was committed because I was the leader, and I had to make an effort. And as the next thing we're going to talk about, leadership is heavy.
It is.
Leadership is heavy, and it was heavy, and it was uncomfortable for me in so many different ways. But I felt I was a leader, and I had to make that sacrifice. So I flew down, spent 2 weeks there, and it worked because he became number one in the region. And I never gloated, but nothing was ever said. But it was a wonderful feeling. So, um, the last, well, next to last, talk a little bit about empathy and creating psychological safety because that's important to put people at ease. Because the bottom line is you want people to be productive, and that's what it's all about. And part of the ingredients, you got to have empathy and they're soft skills, but you got to have it. So I mean, that's just part of your picture of.
Yep. So once as a leader, you have defined the three elements and again, analogy is an analogy. You can put that analogy in your own words and in your definition or how it makes sense to you. But like I said, once you have defined the three elements of being a leader, the beacon, the wayfinder, and the seafarer, once you have defined these three elements and you play these three roles all at the same time, or just one at one time and the other one at different time, depending how you're dealing. And it might be one time a day, it might be, a day you just play one role and next day you play different role, or you're playing three roles at the same time, like I said. But the underlying part of this is your human values, being a human. Before you became a leader, before I became a leader, what common thing that we have is our human values, our fundamental psychological human needs. Before you became a follower or I became a follower, same thing. So bringing it from that level, bringing it down to a level of what we are biologically human species, there are elements and there are traits that we need as being humans. Psychological safety is one of those. We we can only nurture and grow in a space where we feel psychologically safe. And what psychological safety is not is toxic positivity. Often people think that, oh, if we make everyone feel that this is great, we have often seen this spotlight culture, this TikTok and Instagram culture where everyone is happy. And often organizations do pretend to do that. Like everyone has to, talk about how grateful they are. Everyone has to talk about how happy they are. Everyone has to talk about how much they like their leader. That's not psychological safety. Psychological safety is letting people be who they are as they are and being authentic. And how that happens once leaders learn that and they become authentic themselves. And what does that authenticity means? It means being vulnerable, being honest about it, being honest that I made a mistake, being honest about that, I made a mistake, you can make a mistake too. It's okay to fail. What it's not okay is celebrating failures. What it's okay is to make mistakes and learn and grow from those mistakes. And often leaders don't understand in today's world. And it's a huge weight because you have to deal with KPIs, you have to understand the rules of the game, you have to make sure the next quarterly results meet and you meet your profitability and all that stuff. And what I talk about through my work is those are the rules of the game. You play football, soccer, whatever you play, you have to abide by the rules of the games. You have to make sure that referee is not constantly showing you red card and constantly getting you out of the pitch. And the same way, those KPIs results, those have to be there because we are living in a corporate world, profit sheets, financial reports, those matter. But don't fall in love with those sheets. They are not the reason why you're there. In the same sense, organization's goal is not to get to next quarterly or next yearly result. They are just the rules of the game. So from that sense, leaders have to understand what are the psychological needs of their teams. And I call this in some ways, it's a balance between heart and steel. That you don't accept underperformance, you don't accept poor results. That's your steel part. You define the rule, define the game, and define the boundaries and march toward those boundaries and work towards your goals. But what it is don't lose the hard part.
Yeah.
That's the human part of your
Human
leadership.
part. So nicely said. The human part that's forgotten about so much. The human part. Um, Last thing, and I like this. It's a nice way to kind of wrap up. It's like an exercise. Um, Before you make a decision, whether it's like big or small, ask yourself, does this align with my core values? It's so important to have core values, who you are, what you believe in, and to live by that. And that's a great little thing. Does this align with who I am and what I am, my purpose, the whole core value thing? So elaborate on that, please.
I call it values litmus test, Calvin. Uh, in some ways, it is profound, and in some ways, it's a really simple ritual. You can do it for sake of doing it, or you can embrace it as part of who you are, and you can start implementing this test to everything you do. And by everything you do, an email that pops in your inbox and you look at it and there is a frustrated person on the other side who wrote that email, you can respond them right away. You can respond them with answers that no, this is it, you're wrong, this is what we did, and this is what you should be getting from me. Or you can pause for 10 seconds and you think and ask yourself, what are your values? And you remind yourself those values. And when you remind yourself those values, ask yourself, self, that the action that you are about to commit, is it going to make you one step closer to your values, your purpose, or is it going to take you one or two steps away? And when you keep asking this question over and over again, you won't go to meetings for sake of being in meetings. You won't participate with clients just because they're giving you a good dollar value, but their values don't align with you. You won't take a check from a company who says that they are really worrying about climate change or they're really careful about how they're impacting the society, but at the back you know that their values don't talk with or align with their actions, but you will take that check. When you start implementing your values check in the simple, like I said, simple decisions of responding an email or going all the way to that this is really important client and we are $2 million short of our paycheck or our target this year, should we work with this client or not, even though their values don't align with us, you will get an answer. And that's what I call it, values litmus test.
I like that. I like that, and I like everything I've heard. Captain set sail. And of course, you're going to let me know when this is up and around, and you're going to come back, and we'll talk about this more. But this is, you know what? It's a never ending. This is an evolving, and the fact that you took the time, even as an accidental writer, you took the time to get this out. Hey, this is a tough subject. It's not Batman and Superman stuff, and maybe it is, but it's a tough subject, but so needed because I think in so many ways it's just not paid attention to in so many ways. And we see it, that pharmacy chain I work for with terrible leadership all the way around. And I felt I was an expense, not an asset. And I just watched. Of course, I'm long gone from that, and they're long gone. A couple thousand stores just disappeared. Why? Because it's leadership. Bottom line, it's
Absolutely.
leadership. And sometimes a couple of words here or there by the leader can light a whole bunch of different fires. And that's why what you do, Dave, is so important. And especially now as the world is going through so much change and quality leadership is so needed all the way around. Not even
Absolutely.
leadership of a company, leadership of other things. And I'm not going to dwell on that. So, uh, this was great, and I'm formally inviting you to come back. We can do panels. We could talk about stuff. We could talk about the Outback if you want, and stuff.
Love to do that.
We can talk about that. I've always been fascinated with Australia. I told you one of my favorite movies takes place in Australia. On the beach. I quote Neville Shute. All the time. There's still time, brother, and that's so appropriate today. It was written a million years ago. So appropriate in the music. So, really, and thank you for getting up early tomorrow. You got up early tomorrow to be here, and that's great. And we have a
He knows. Yes,
that's
we have a puppy, and it's funny. He knows that this is all about to be wrapped up,
oh wow,
and here he is
he
with
came
his
in.
toy.
Oh wow, we have I babysit for my son's daughter-in-law's dog. And when she wants to make a statement, she grabs the toy and brings it. There's nothing like a dog. Nothing in
Yep.
the world, nothing in the world like a dog, but we could talk about that. So, I'm going to stop recording. Please come back. This is a never-ending subject. Please come back. We're going to stay in touch. Thank you. Thank you. Don't leave because we're going to do a little 2-minute wrap. But thank you so much for this and for your passion and for your energy because I love this stuff. It's great.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much. It's an honor, profound honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Don't leave.